Alright guys, we're going to jump right into it. I've noticed that my AMS is starting to have some issues reading filament. And what you'll see is whenever you load filament, you'll have a light come on. Sometimes the light goes red. Sometimes you can blow it out with a compressed air can. Sometimes you can just feed filament back and forth through it and clean it out. But I have two that have failed, so I'm only going to change one right now. But these are called the feeding funnels. And if you'll look closely at this very first one, there's a big divot. So it's seen a lot of wear. But over time, these things do fail. They're not expensive to change, maybe $7, $8 for the part, but they are kind of tricky to change. And I like to kind of showcase how we do it live, not fast forward and skipping a whole bunch of stuff. This is step by step as I change it. So the tools that I'm going to be using are the two Allen key wrenches that come with your kit. And then I have a pair of needle nose pliers. And I have a larger pair of pliers. You don't have to use a set of pliers like this, but I'm actually going to use it as a spacer later to hammer out a shim. So you'll kind of see, whenever you see me use it, you'll understand that you can use something else as long as it's got a firm surface and then a pocket for a pin to fall through. So without further ado, we're going to begin by disassembling it. And obviously it's unplugged. And if you don't know how to remove the PTFE line, there are little paddles back here. You pull them downward as you pull the PTFE line right out. It's very simple to pull out. And once you get it out and everything, all your filaments unloaded, you're ready to roll. So you're going to grab your larger Allen key, and there's only 2 screws. Just turn them until you feel it lightly click. Boom. That lets you know that you've hit the end of the threads. Don't worry about removing the screws. It's okay. We're going to make them fall out here in a second. I've done these many times because we have a small little farm here. So with those screws removed, we're going to tilt this entire tray up, and we're going to run into a snag every time. It's fine. The paddles that we touched earlier are going to hit the edge of this case. So just a little push whenever we're pulling it up. But there are 2 wiring harnesses back here that we're going to have to unplug. So we're only going to pull it up just far enough for me to get my hand in, and I'm going to lightly disconnect them. So we'll see what we're talking about here. I'm going to tilt it up, and it's hitting the back of the case. I'm just lightly pressing with my thumb, and now it's nice and clear. I'm going to tilt it just up, and on the inside, you're going to see 2 wires. Oh, there goes our screws. 1, 2. They kind of fall into the tray, and then I use this as a little screw keep. So we have our 2 wiring harnesses here. You have a 2-wire plug, and then it looks like a 4-wire plug. I'm just going to gently grab each one, pull it straight up. There's 1, and there's 2. That's all it takes to remove the entire tray of your AMS system. And then the 2 screws that we removed have already kind of fallen into the case. We don't need that at the moment now. So I know which one I'm going to replace today, which is number 1. So don't get it backwards on the back side. So on the back side, what holds these on are 4 screws, 1 wiring harness, and then your lower PTFE tube. It is a little trickier to get to, but I found if I depress the ring, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here, on the PTFE tubes, there are these plastic rings. Whenever you depress these, it allows the fitting to unlock the tube. So what I do is I'll get my long Allen key, and I can see the ring. It might be hard to see it on camera, but you see what you're looking at on this one. It's the same on this end. I see the ring. I'm going to lightly push down on the collar of that ring right beside that tube, and then pull the PTFE tube out. It's very simple once you kind of have done it a few times. It is important though, push the collar down before you pull. Don't try to start pulling on it and then push the collar down, because it actually won't unlock. Depress, then lightly pull, and it comes undone very simply. So now we're going to follow number 1's wire. And it doesn't matter, whichever one you're doing, you would follow a different wire, but we see that this is the harness for number 1, and it plugs right into the side of this board here. So we're just going to gently unplug number 1. Okay, and some of these wires, depending on which one you're doing, will be fished underneath clips and stuff. So just make sure that you slide them out from underneath any of these clips. Like, for example, number 2, you can see that it kind of routes underneath, if I can make the camera focus, underneath the clip, so you would have to lightly slide that guy out. But on number 1, it doesn't matter. So the next thing is we're going to have 4 Allen head screws. That is the smaller tool. And there's 2 here, and there's 2 here. And again, it doesn't matter which one you're working on. So the ones that are closer to the center, you actually have to go, there's pockets on the board that you can go through to get to those. So you can still access all 4 screws. So we're going to go ahead and remove all 4 of these. Now, after I break them free, I'm just going to turn them lightly, and I'm feeling the click. When I feel the click, I know that I'm at the bottom or the end of the threads, and the screw is released. Like I said, we're just threading into plastic. Okay. And I don't care if the screw pops out or not, because I'm in a controlled area. And what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to just kind of let them fall into that tray. And it'll be our little screw keeper. So, all right, that is number 2. I can kind of feel it go click, click, click. We're going to go for number 3 here. Okay. That one is trying to actually fall out. I want to make sure that that guy doesn't fall out. Like I said, you're going to see me goof up and all kinds of stuff because I do this live. This is real. It's not pre-recorded 17 takes. It's just me in the garage doing some routine maintenance. And maybe I'll help somebody out that's maybe nervous about repairing one of these things. I know I was the first time I started taking things apart. So with that screw, I was actually able to grab by my hand. But it doesn't matter. The ones that I can't, I'm just going to lightly shake them in there. Okay, cool. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4 screws removed. Now this part is a little tricky. There are 2 things that I've learned that hold these things in. First off, you have this roller here with the little gear. To know how it clips on, it's easy just to kind of understand is by looking at the back. They just tension, snap in. We don't need to remove the back. If you're curious on how they hold in, it's a tension, snap. But it kind of fishes under your feeder here. So I'm going to pop up 1, 2. So now I know it's free. And then I'll kind of lightly pull back on the unit as I'm pushing the bar out. And it comes out. That way it is out of the way. We're just going to put that in our tray. Now, everything is free to get this out. It has 2 clips. You can't get to them. You can't see them. But they are just small little tension clips. So it does require a little bit of force. So I'm going to hold the tray down as I pull this unit out. Don't worry, it's fine. You can see the clip there and the clip there. Sorry if my hands are permanently stained. I am a mechanic by trade. So those little clips right there are what kind of hold it into place. And that is the entire unit. So now we don't need the tray at the moment. I'm just going to lightly sit it in the case. Make sure I don't pinch those wires. So now we're down to where we can actually see what's called the funnel. Now, like I said, these things are only about $7, $8, I think. And they're not terribly difficult to change, but it's a lot of little steps. This next part, after we take these screws out, is the most difficult part. So the next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to have 4 screws to remove. So if you're looking at it from the front, on the left hand side there's 1 screw. On the right hand side, there's 2, so that's 3 total. And then the 4th one is hidden on the very bottom, way down in there. But again, very simple to get to. It is our smaller Allen key. And then I'm just going to put those screws in the case. You're not going to get them mixed up. The 2 original screws that we've taken out have a much wider head on them. The 4 that we took out to remove this unit are black, and these 4 are silver, so you don't have to worry about getting them mixed up. I'm just going to sit them in there as we take them off so that I don't have to worry about them escaping on the table. So I'm doing the side with the 2 screws. There we go. Side with the 1 screw. And then our last one is this one that's right here. Remember, this is threaded into plastic, so they shouldn't be tight. Very little force should be needed. And that's actually more important whenever you're tightening them back up, and I'll show you that trick whenever we go back together. So with that said, this cover will come off of this base. Just lightly pull it. Now, this wiring harness from the factory has like a silicone glue that holds this plug in. It does make it a little tricky, but you can do it with your fingernails. Get on one side and pick, get on the other side and pick, and just go back and forth, back and forth. Try not to pull by the wires. This is how you're going to damage it, especially since it's glued in. So I'm going to get on one side, and I'm going to lightly pry it. And you can see the glue try to start freeing up. I'm going to get on this side. I'm going to lightly pry it. You can see the glue slowly starting to peel. And that means that now I can now separate the 2 base pieces. I'm done with this piece for a little while. And now we just have the feeder funnel ready to remove. Now, the way that this is held in is the difficult part. You can see how it pivots back and forth. It's pivoting on this little pin that's just pushed into the side of the case here. And on the other side, you're going to see just a hollow hole. So there is a pin that is pressed in. No screws, no nothing. It is pressed in. It has a knurled ring that presses into the body. So this is the side that has the pin made onto it. This is the side that has this fatter pin. This has a knurled ring, and it is actually pressed in. It is kind of tricky to get this thing out. So the way that I've figured out to do it is just like using a bench or a press to remove ball bearings or ball joints or whatnot at work, is I'm going to put something underneath it that is hard to push against, but it has a pocket for that pin to fall through. If I just had a solid bottom and I pushed, the pin has nowhere to go. So it needs a place for the pin to fall through. So like I said, it doesn't have to be a pair of pliers, but if you can imagine, if that set of pliers was like this, now I can push against it and the pin has somewhere to go. So we're going to line that up like this, and we are going to use our larger Allen key, and I'm going to try, make sure that guy is still lined up, I'm going to try to push it through. Sometimes you can push them by hand, sometimes you have to tap them. So let's see here. All right, I am starting to see a little bit of daylight, so we are definitely moving it. I know you can strike them. I've had to do it before that were really seized on there, but if you do end up having to do that, be very careful. Okay, this one is going to fight us. So I am going to find a way of lightly striking it. I'm actually going to use these pliers as my hammer, so I'm going to switch to this to be my hard surface. And I'm trying my hardest to use just the tools that are provided in the kit but you'll have things around the house that you may be able to find to use easier, whether it be a punch or something else like that. So we want to make sure that that is for sure in the pocket of that pair of pliers. Okay, we did make some progress on it. You see the pin is slowly starting to pop out. So we just got to give it a few more taps here. And like I said, I'm just using the Allen as a light little punch. Making sure I keep this guy over the pocket. You're almost through. I'll try to do this the long way. It might be easier for me to hold. Yeah, normally what I use is a nail punch, and I'm trying to do this using an Allen key, which is not the easiest tool to use for this. Let's see if we can actually grab it and pull it. Nope, it's not out far enough. This one is being rather difficult. Hopefully this is a lot more difficult than the ones that you guys have to replace, because most of the time these guys just a couple little taps and it comes right out. There we go. Awesome. The little spring fell off of the thing. The previous funnel. So it did take a couple more taps than normal, but you can see now that this knurled ring has now been popped out of its case. I was trying not to, and I did not damage this case. I don't really care that much about damaging this funnel. It's getting completely replaced. So with that said, now it's out far enough to grab with our pliers and pull that pin out. Let's get a closer look at this guy. You can kind of see the knurling on the end. And this is the part that we're replacing. You can see that guy's seen many miles of filament. So to keep me from mixing them up, I'm going to go ahead and file this guy in the trash can. So luckily going back together is a little more simple. So just like before, we have the pin that sits into the pocket of the case, and then we have our knurled pin. So looking at the case, so the gear and the button for it actually goes outboard. So you're going to see a little button. It goes away from the opening, this button on this thing, and it just kind of slips into this pocket and just stays there. Now on the other side, we're going to get our pin. Make sure the knurled piece goes in last. So the smooth part goes in first, lightly goes in, and make sure that it does indeed go into our funnel. And then this presses in. Now I'm pushing it in by hand. That's how easy it is to do the second time. So I'm going to put it on my table, and I'm going to push by this ledge, not by this, because I can break the case. I'm going to push by this face, just against my table, so it's not a lot of force. And we have pushed the pin back in. So it is nice, seated, it's flush, and we have good movement here. It is ready to go back together. So we're going to grab the bottom half of our case, and then we are going to get this guy. Now these two wheels are going to want to move on you. If you get mixed up or whatnot on them, you can always glance at the other units. But if we go off the round thing, the very round face of it, the one that's on the left hand side kind of goes down, and this one's going to go at about the halfway mark. Because what we're going to do is it's actually this half moon goes into this, and this kind of goes behind this feeder funnel. See if I can get this guy to line up for the first try. The spring is going to fight you. It's going to try to bite into the little gears, but you just kind of just lightly pull it out of the way whenever it tries to bind on things. There we go. See, our little spring was trying to catch on those gears. Now you're going to see a little recessed tooth here. That's where your spring's going to live. So I'm just going to pick it up with the Allen key and set it there. Okay, so to make sure everything looks right, looking at it from the round side, rotate it to this side. This arm lives here because there's a little indentation here and a little indentation here that it has to stay in between so that it can travel back and forth whenever it's accessed. And on this side, there's a little indentation here that this one has to stay below so that it can travel up and down when it's needed. So our two armatures are where they're supposed to be. Our spring is in the pocket. We can clearly move it. It's not binding on anything. Now all we have to do is plug in our feeder funnel and tighten up our 4 screws. Probably would have been easier to plug this guy in first, but sometimes the fighting with the wires is a little bit of a pain. So I'm going to use my little Allen key. I've kind of touched the plug to it, and I'm going to use it just to push that clip in. Now I'm also squeezing the body together because it's not held together with fasteners yet. Alright, my plug is nice and seated. I'm going to set this down and I'm going to look for my 4 silver screws that I've got in my case here. So let's remove this tray here. One, 2, 3, and we're looking for the 4 silver screws. 4, fantastic. So now the trick to tightening things that are threaded into plastic, these things cut their own threads. If you just force these things to tighten, you're going to cut new threads and you're going to weaken it. So the way I've learned to do plastic is I put it in and I loosen it. I turn it the wrong way. So we're going to go counterclockwise until I feel a click. I felt a click. Now I know that I have found the previous threads, and then I lightly spin it. I feel it stop, and then I give it just a little turn. Because if you try to cut a second set of threads, and then the next thing you do it again, you're cutting a third set of threads. These, like I said, there's no nut in there. It's just, you're just cutting in a plastic. You don't want to tear that up. So again, we'll spin it backwards. I felt a click. I know that we've now lined up again. Feel it bottom out, and I give it just a little bump. It doesn't have to be extremely tight. So that was 1 on that side. There's 2 on this side. Felt my click there, did I? I'm going to double check that. I wasn't sure about that click. Oh, there we go. That was for sure click. And this one's usually a little more tricky to start. So I'll show you my trick to doing this bottom one so you don't keep dropping it 1,000 times. Turn your unit upside down. Instead of trying to hold it like this and try to nail that and drop the screw 16 times, hold it right side up. And we're just going to feed it from the bottom in. And there we go. Felt the click. Turned it. There we go. This guy is now fully rebuilt and ready to be back installed. So I don't need this tool. I don't need this tool. I'm going to pull my tray over here. And we're going to fish our wiring harness back into the opening. And remember, it's got a little click. So we're going to line it up. And you'll feel those little tabs click. Yep, they both clicked at the same time. Fantastic. All right, so on the back side, this is another very important thing if you're kind of new to the AMS systems. Is these tubes wear out. And it's almost hard to see it because they don't wear out. I'll go ahead and remove this one. They don't wear out on the outside very much. They wear out on the inside. So you'll look really closely inside of the tube. And you'll see that if the tube is worn really, oblonged or whatnot, it'll eventually use that filament like a saw blade and cut open, especially on this turn here. Cut open the tube and the filament actually start pulling out inside of your AMS and cause all kinds of binding issues. So while you're here, just glance at them. They actually sell these pre-made in packs. They're very inexpensive. To replace the whole thing, I think it's like $3, like all 4 of these tubes. So I'm going to put that back. So I'm going to go ahead and plug my AMS part back into the board. Again, if you had the ones that clips, now's the time to go ahead and fish the clips. This one did not. And then I'm going to unhook it from this end. It's easier for me to seat this in whenever I can like maneuver it. So I'm going to push it, make sure I feel it click. All right, it is bottomed out in there. And then, like I said, this end's a lot easier. These wires, just make sure they're up out of the way. That's the ones that plug into the outside of the body. Okay. Now all we have to do is put in our 4 screws here that hold that guy in. Now, like I said, we have 2 types of screws left in our case. You should see one with a larger head, and then there's going to be 2 of these, and then there's going to be 4 of these smaller guys. So grab your 4 of your smaller guys. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. Same deal. We're gonna find where it goes, spin it backwards, so I'll feel it click. And then thread it into the body. Once you feel it stop, that's it. Just a little bump. Once you feel it, because you'll feel what's called a firm stop. That's whenever the head of the screw is now touching and it's pulled the unit all the way up. That's all it needs to go. And then that last little bump just helps keep it snug. Don't over tighten plastic threads. I felt that one's click almost immediately. There we go. And then these 2 right here. There we are. This one's trying to jump on the little Allen key. So not very good Allen keys. I can already see that this little Allen key is already starting to round, and this is not the one I was hammering on. So these little Allen keys they're not that great. So I definitely recommend, if you're going to take your stuff apart a lot, invest in some nicer Allen. But this will definitely work to get you up and running. But if you're going to be seriously printing and seriously taking things apart, a decent set of Allens, maybe even magnetic ones, that would help taking and disassembling. So okay, everything's done here. We're going to flip it back over. I'm going to install my roller here with the gear. And if you forget which side the gear is supposed to go on, which side does it go on, just glance at your other units, and we're going to see that the gear is on the left-hand side. So I'm going to place it kind of where it goes, and I'm going to lightly roll it into its spot. And then, most important thing, click, click. And you should be able to freely roll it. If you do not click those things in there, it will ride up against this case and bind. And it should free spin very, very, very smoothly. Okay, this is completely ready to go. All we have to do is set it back in our case, plug in our 2 plugs, and put in our last 2 screws. So we have our 2 screws. I'm going to take them out of the case so I don't bury them. Bring my case back over here. Set this guy in. Remember, put your AMS motors in first, and then you're going to see your 2 plugs. For me, it's easier to start with the longer of the 2, which is the power wire. So we're going to grab this guy. Scoot this guy a little bit closer. There we go. And a light little push, you'll feel it click. It's just a little click. And then the signal wire, control wire, it's a little 4-tooth plug. This guy sometimes fights me. Oops, sorry, bumped the camera. There we go. All right, I felt that one click. So now all I have to do, so you can see we're nice and plugged into that board. Now what we're going to do is we're going to just gently roll these motors to the front. Same deal as last time. You're going to have this little paddle. It's going to hit the edge of the case, and that's fine. It's normal. There we go. So you can see it's going to catch the back edge of the case. I'm going to lightly spread the case and let it just fall into place. Now, there is a small black rubber tube that your PTFE is going to enter through right here. And whenever it goes on, it always pushes it down. So I just grab my little Allen key and flip it where it's lined up with the hole, because it's just like a little rubber sock, and whenever you pop it back down, it'll bend that little tube. So we're just going to bend it back to where it goes, and case is ready to roll. These ones, I just put the screw tip down, make sure the head's up, and drop them into the little recesses. This is back to our larger wrench. Same deal, find it, spin it, boom, loud click. Here we are. And one more. Move my Allen around, rotate it backwards, got a good click. And that is the last step of replacing the funnel feeder. All right, well, I hope you guys can get some use out of that. Let me know if you have any other suggestions of things you want to see me make videos of on the rebuild. And thank you very much for hanging out with us tonight.